What is going on, YouTube? I am Lamont at large. Today I am in Boardman, Ohio, and I'm here to talk about the unsolved murder of Brad Bellino. Currently I'm on the grounds of Boardman Middle School. This is the same school where Brad went to along with his best friend Donald Templeman. They both went to this school and they both had played on the same baseball team for about 3 years. These kids were inseparable. They were best friends. If you would be around Boardman, Ohio, if you've seen Brad Bellino, you best believe Donald Templeman is either right behind him or right next to him or not very far away. These kids hung out all the time. Donald's father was the coach of their baseball team. Donald was the pitcher and Brad was the catcher. And oftentimes enough, they would each spend the night at each other's house. One night, Donald would go to Brad's house. The next night, Brad would go to Donald's house. And when Brad would go to Donald's house, he would often get a ride from one of Donald's parents to take him back home. So on the Friday, March 31st, 1972, that was Easter weekend. So there was no school here on Friday. So that previous Thursday night, Brad went to go sleep at Donald's house. So Friday comes, they wake up, and then they go around town messing around. Maybe they came to the school to mess around. Maybe they were at that mall. Couple of kids bored in Ohio looking for something to do. So they're goofing around, going around town on their bikes. And a brown van had driven by them. And one of the kids goes, "Hey, isn't that the same van that we seen over at the shopping center?" And they kind of shrugged it off, and then they seen that van again. And then they started making jokes about, creepy guy in a van, blah, blah, blah. Finally, Donald said, "Hey, let's just get out of here. Let's just go home. Let's go to my house." So they take off on their bikes and they start heading over to Donald's house. Now, Donald's father normally, again, would take Brad home, or Donald's mother would take him home. He was supposed to be at home at 4:30 that Friday afternoon, but he called his dad, Joseph Bellino, and he says, "Hey, Dad, can I stay here a little bit longer?" And his dad, Joseph, said, "Okay, cool. You can stay there a little bit longer, but I want you back here at 9 p.m. Currently, I am walking on Teakwood Avenue here in Boardman, and if you can see that house right there with that silver car in the driveway, that would be the former home of Donald Templeman's family. This was the last known location of Brad Bellino. So he left this house about 7:30 p.m. Friday night, March 31st, 1972. Now, when he left this home, he had a 3-mile walk ahead of him. So if you kind of lollygag, even if you don't walk too fast, you should be able to make a 3-mile walk home with plenty of time to spare. Now, Brad was kind of known as a wanderer, so maybe he would have wandered off and stopped off and said hello to his friend over here, or just stopped at the store to get some candy or whatever. But again, from all intents and purposes, this was the last known location that he was seen. Currently, right now, I'm on Mcclerg Road. A newspaper article said that Brad Bellino lived at 61 Mcclerg Road, and this is where 61 Mcclerg Road would be. I don't know if this used to be a housing development and it was knocked down. This hospital right here looks like it's a pretty new construction, as is that YMCA back that way. But this is the general area where Brad lived with his older brothers, older sister, mom, and dad. Now, I want to talk to you guys really quickly because this story about who called the police and when gets a little bit tricky. So originally, when Brad did not show up home at 9 p.m., you would think that his father would have been worried and would have called the Templeman house to see where Brad was. However, that particular night, it was Friday, and Brad's father worked in the steel factory. So Friday night, you're going to go out with your boys and go get some beers and what have you. So he was gone for the night. I'm not exactly sure where his mother was, but Brad's father, Joseph, went out for the night, and he did not get home until about 2 o'clock in the morning. He went to sleep thinking that Brad was already home in bed, and his dad did not discover that Brad wasn't home and never showed up home until the following morning, going into the afternoon, when he woke up. Now, another newspaper article says that Brad's older sister called the police at 9 p.m. I'm not really sure. What we do know is that a call was made to the police department at around 3 p.m. in the afternoon saying that Brad was missing. Brad's dad called the Templeman house and he said, "Hey, where's Brad?" And they said, "Well, he left here at 7:30. So I drove the distance from their house to where his house would be, which is 3 miles. And I do suspect this is it because this is about 2.8 miles on my GPS. Now, when the police got the call that their kid was missing, they started looking for him, and they did like a search of the city. Nothing came up. Brad had a cousin that was a member of the Youngstown Police Department Vice Squad, a detective by the name of Tony DiPolito. So Officer DiPolito was helping with the search, looking for Brad. April 1st turned into April 2nd. April 2nd turned into April 3rd. So now we have a kid that's been missing for 3 days now with no sign, no clue of where he's at. And now his parents and the community of Youngstown and Boardman are on full alert. We have a missing kid that has not returned home after walking from his friend's house. Now, very sadly, the following day after that, April 4th, 1972, at around 8 a.m., a grisly discovery was made at a shopping plaza not too far from here. This here is the Boardman Shopping Plaza, and one of these stores back in the 70s used to be a rock store. They would sell different rocks and gems, and Donald and Brad would often come to the store and hang out just to look at the rocks and the geodes that they sold there. And on that morning, April 4th, 1972, around 8 a.m., an employee of a trash collection company was doing his daily rounds, and he had pulled up in back of Isley's dairy store. It used to be a chain of dairy stores that sold milk, cheese, dairy products, so forth and so on. Now, judging from the pictures, I can't really tell exactly what store used to be Isley's dairy store, but it would be somewhere in the back of this building right here. So the guy comes to get the trash. He pulls over the lid of the dumpster and he sees a pair of feet sticking out of the trash can. Immediately he backs up and runs to call 911. And when the police arrived, they found the body of what looked like to be a young boy. And of course, all of the police in the surrounding areas of Boardman and Youngstown knew that there was an APB out for a missing 12-year-old boy by the name of Brad Bellino. Now, of course, when you see a body of a child in the back of a alley type area in a trash can, you automatically already know it's him. But just to make sure, they called Brad's cousin, Officer Belino, to confirm the identity, and he came to this scene and had to identify his own cousin as being that of Brad Bellino. And I believe this might be the general area, one of the dumpsters where he was found. Now, when they pulled his body out, they seen that it appeared that his pants were pulled down below his hips, and there was a belt that was wrapped around his neck, cinched. His body was then taken to a hospital right around this area for an autopsy, and it was sadly determined that this kid was sexually assaulted before he was killed. And the medical examiner that was doing the autopsy indicated that the time of death would have been around 9 p.m. April 1st. So we have 26 hours of missing time. Donald Templeman seen Brad leave his house at 7:30 p.m. on Friday, March 31st, 1972. The body is found April 4th, 1972, and the time of death is placed April 1st, 1972, around 9 p.m. So for 26 hours, this kid is missing, more than likely when he was kidnapped, being horribly brutalized. And God knows what other unspeakable horrors this disgusting monster did to that child. Now, I also want to say this really quickly. There was unconfirmed reports of people in the area having seen Brad that Saturday. One person said, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, I seen him at Dairy Queen. Oh yeah, sure, I seen him at the mall down the street right over there. Yeah, I seen him on Saturday." The problem with those reports is that, remember how I said earlier, there was no school on Friday. So when there's no school on Friday, oftentimes people will get that mixed up with a Saturday. So in all likelihood, people did see him on Friday. But of course, no school, they're getting confused with Saturday. I believe DNA was collected from Brad's body, from his clothing. However, as many hits as you would get in the DNA databank, to this day, there has been no hits at all whatsoever. So we got one more stop to go to before we end this vlog, and that is the final resting place of Brad Bellino. Now, there was a couple suspects that the police were looking at after the discovery of Brad's body. One of them was this neighborhood creep they called Old Bob. He was a man that lived in the general area, and it was quite well known that he would exchange sexual favors for, beer, cigarettes, marijuana, whatever. The police looked at him very closely, but they found no evidence of him committing any wrongdoing. And there was a security guard who worked at that Boardman shopping plaza that I was just at, that would, be seen talking to young kids. Sometimes, people think that he was talking to them a little bit too long, and he showed a little bit too much, interest in them. However, he was cleared of any wrongdoing. So You had your suspects here and there, and they've tried to piece together possible suspects, but to no avail. And, you have it almost 50 years later, and no DNA hits, no nothing. And this here is the final resting place of Brad Bellino right there. And he's buried next to his father, Joseph Belino Jr. I don't know where their mother is buried, his father and son. Very, very, very sad story, and just ultimately heartbreaking.